Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Richard and welcome back to the weekly watch list video sponsored by MarketSmith. And today we're going to go through a ton of stocks. You can see the list right here that are potentially setting up and are basically some areas to be focused on if this new rally that potentially started on Friday has legs and we do get a nice trend out of it. So we'll go through each of these stocks. I'll talk about the technicals, fundamentals, what kind of put it on this list for me. And as I go through, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Maybe out of these names, give me your top 3 or 5, as well as any others that aren't on this list that you're watching very carefully. And if you do enjoy my analysis, I would really appreciate it if right now you go ahead and leave a like on this video. It helps me out immensely. And of course, subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this one, as well as tutorials and interviews with top traders. And with that said, after you've left a like on the video, let's dive right in with, this overall list. So I've kind of organized this way so you can kind of see the industry groups that I'm watching. You've got a lot of oil and gas, which has been, one of the leading spots in the market, especially last week. We had a breakout on XLE. So energy has been strong. Medical biotech continues to act extremely well. And you've got some more energy down here, as well as a few chip names and some computer software related stock. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive right in and start with the first stock, which is ORLY, O'Reilly Automotive. So first things first, it's right near all-time highs during a bear market. Relative strength rating is quite strong. This isn't going to be a super fast mover, but for those of you who like kind of more liquid type names, this is definitely a good option. And we're potentially setting a pivot right under 750. I'd love to see a breakout on volume through that level. You can manage risk right at that low of the day, or even at, this previous kind of higher low, which would basically line up with that 21 EMA. So a good setup for those of you who want some exposure and, want something outside of tech. And this has been a stock that's been super strong going to a weekly chart. You can see that this is a long-term performer overall. So definitely a name to watch, and you've got decent growth numbers. It's slowing down a little bit, but estimates are increasing on an annual basis. Moving on, we've got CLH, Clean Harbors, and this is the only name within its group that's acting well. So that's something to keep in mind of. This doesn't have, the backing of an amazing sector or industry group. It's kind of a lone leader. So overall, I'm watching this pivot right here. We had a beautiful outside day here on Friday, which would have been a great entry through this high if you're watching this closely. But now I'm watching for some continuation. I love maybe, a tight day, consolidation day here before that. So you can manage risk right, at that prior low. But basically, I want to see a breakout on volume through this early pivot and then a challenge of those all-time highs. Looking at the chart, what I really like is this gap up here, definitely showing a lot of power, nice volume here. We then kind of dropped down, consolidated, but ultimately found support and now are forming, short-term higher lows here. So we'll just have to see what happens, but definitely looking for a breakout on volume. And let me actually open this up. You can see a subtle increase in volume in 2 high-quality funds investing into this company, and nice estimates for this year as well. DVN, a lot of energy names look very similar to this. You've got kind of a pivot along horizontally here, as well as down here. We had a breakout through this early pivot on Friday, and I'd love to see, move up to this line, maybe a consolidation, one more contraction, and then you can manage risk right at that higher low. So that's what I'm watching for here. A nice prior uptrend, basing pattern. This is a little bit wide and loose for my liking. We've got this gap down, some, caution signs in here, but this is pretty much, the strongest group recently. We have XLE, which broke out really nicely, and the overall RS rating is a strong 98. We do have earnings in 9 days, and for any of these stocks, make sure you're watching when that date is. Even if I do not mention it, make sure you look up the date if you're interested in it. But yeah, great numbers here, triple-digit growth in terms of earnings and sales, great estimates for this year, a little bit of an increase in 2023. And you've got a nice increase in fund ownership, although a slight decrease here from Fidelity, at least in the most recent quarter. So that is DVN. Moving on, we've got DEN, which is also within that same space. Nice upside reversal on Friday, looking for basically fall through here through this high. Let's actually go over to, actually a 15-minute chart here. You've basically got, a short-term flag forming here. You've got the horizontal pivot, basically just above 98, and then it also lines up with this area as well. So that's kind of the short-term pivot that I'm watching. You had an early entry through this level. You saw a retest of that, reclaim, and a retest late in the day as well. So watching for, a breakout through this flag on volume on a shorter time frame. But remember, the only reason we're looking at a short-term time frame is because the higher time frame is showing power and a potential setup through this pivot. And you've got the sector with it as well. And I like how this pullback lined up with this prior level as well. So that is DEN. VNOM also has that kind of horizontal pivot look, a little bit wide within this consolidation, but you know, a nice inside day on Friday. I want to see a breakout on volume pushing through this level and ideally through 33.81 as well. Great growth numbers. You can see triple digit earnings growth, sales growth, margins are improving as well. Great estimates for this year. Not too much fund ownership, but it is increasing, and none of that high quality fund ownership either. So this is kind of a lower quality, you know, more price based move, potential leader, but that overall RS rating is a strong at 95. SM, looking at this chart, not quite as well developed, but I like the action off the 50 SMA. And you've got a short-term flag here, upside reversal. So I'm watching for follow through here on volume. Basically, yeah, I definitely want to see volume come in. I like how this gap down was supported off the lows, retested that 200 SMA, but once again, it's kind of got that wide and loose character. So I think I prefer the other two that I mentioned previously, but great numbers in terms of earnings, sales, estimates are great, although the estimates revisions are down, and you've got Invesco increasing ownership over the past 3 quarters. So that's definitely a plus here with SM. PDCE also has that nice horizontal pivot look. Inside day on Friday, I'm watching for breakout on volume here. Volume has been very low during the short-term consolidation, sideways action. So definitely want to see an increase at least above average, ideally, you know, well above average, something like this. Great numbers in terms of earnings, sales, and margins. Estimates for this year are strong increase in fund ownership and nice increase from Invesco as well over the previous 3 quarters. LNG, this is a natural gas company right near all-time highs, acting strong. And I basically got a horizontal pivot right here. I love, 1 day of pullback consolidation, inside day, let that 21 EMA catch up a little bit, then that breakout, that would be ideal. But I like how it's holding near that 50 SMA and remains in a longer term uptrend. RS rating continues to be extremely, extremely strong. SWAV, this has been kind of basing a little bit, but we had this really nice breakout on enormous volume. And now, just pulling back, we've got this downward trend line to watch, as well as a potential kind of low cheat area. So, some people like to play the breakout like this. I would almost want to wait for it to break out, consolidate, tighten up a little bit, and reconfirm and buy that reconfirmation as it kind of moves up a little bit higher within the space. But nevertheless, an area of the market to watch for sure, that medical space, and also a stock to watch because of that prior power on large volume, as well as great numbers, great fund ownership as well. LOY is kind of one of the more liquid names within this space. And you can see a nice breakout on Friday. I'd love to see maybe an inside day here, and they could buy that kind of reconfirmation. But it's making new highs as the market is, right off its lows. And you can see RS new high before price on this gap up, and just remains a super strong stock. So if you're into those more larger names, institutional quality names that move a little bit slower, this is definitely a name to have on your radar. Similar to that, we've got Vertex, very strong action on Friday, outside day. You could have bought it through this previous high, off the 50 SMA, and it's right at that 300 level, actually closed right at 300. So I'd love to see either continuation to the upside, breaking through this 304 pivot, or a little bit of sideways consolidation flagging. That would be awesome. And then the breakout, managing risk right at this prior low here. Great numbers. You can see earnings up 999%. We have the next batch of earnings in 4 days, so we could get earnings gap up or gap down. We don't have to predict, but definitely something to be aware of. And you've got great fund ownership and decent estimates for 2022. HRMY, this is moving up the right-hand side of its base, forming some higher lows here at this moment off the 21 EMA, and watching the short-term flag here and to see if it can break out, and sustain itself above 50 and move up closer to these previous highs. NBIX, definitely a very choppy one to trade. You can see that that's basically its character, but it remains strong. Beautiful upside reversal on Friday. So I want to see continuation through that prior high, managing risk right at, that prior close or that low of the day area. And ideally a breakout on huge volume into new all-time highs. Amgen, another kind of liquid leader here. We've got this trend line to be aware of, but nice action on Friday. And I like this gap up on large volume. And now it's kind of forming a potential higher low setup. I want to see basically a reconfirmation through these highs, through this downward trend line, You can see that this level around 250, 253 has been a spot where it's reversed in the past. So if it can push through that, that would be a potential change in character. REGN, nice gap up on very large volume. We tried to push up, the market wasn't quite right. Now we're pulling back to 700, which also lines up with this prior level 699. And now potentially, a pullback buy if it reconfirms through that high, nice outside day on Friday. This is a little bit steep here, but not huge volume on that pullback. But I definitely want to see it kind of reassert itself and, continue forming higher highs and higher lows, and ideally push through into new all-time highs. SRPT, a little bit choppy here, and you can see is compressing against that 50 SMA. Yeah, definitely a little bit wide and loose. I'd love to see some tight action here, but this is something that has a lot of potential. Went from 70 to 120 in just a few weeks, and now is forming some type of consolidation base. So ideally, we move up, we can press, form a tight contraction, and that gives us an easy spot to manage risk right at that prior swing low. No earnings with this one, as many biotechs don't have, but you do actually have some sales and quality fund ownership, which always, gives you a little bit more confidence in a stock like this, especially in the biotech space, which can, gap down 70% on a missed trial or something like that. So that's something to be aware of with all these biotech names that I am mentioning. ISEE, very small name, just 2 billion, but super powerful up here, going from 10 to 20 in 2 weeks, 3 weeks right here. And definitely a more volatile name. You don't want to go full position size on this one because it can move quite a bit, but super strong prior strength off the bottom, now consolidating, pulled back, moved back up, super strong, and now forming some type of consolidation. So upside reversal, ideally it pushes through this prior high and just goes, but how it's kind of playing out here, I could easily see it kind of contract against 20 and just form a little bit of a consolidation base. So we'll have to see what happens right here, but definitely a name to watch given that prior strength. No earnings or sales with this one, but you do have T. Rowe Price with a position and a nice increase in fund ownership overall. PRTA, one of the names I'll mention that has this nice big gap up on volume, now consolidating. You could have bought it Friday through an inside day and up setup. Looks like it could maybe use a little bit more time. I'd love to see it, let that 21 EMA catch up to price, have one more contraction for a higher low, then push up, and definitely a name to watch if you're into these nice, huge gap up moves, which can lead to some really nice gains in just a short period of time. BIIB is a similar name. We had this gap up on volume, could have bought it through this short-term flag here, and you've got another pivot right at this prior high, which is about, looks like 274. Just starting to move up from a short-term flag here on Friday on a pickup in volume. So definitely a name to watch and have on your radar. This is just potentially starting a stage 2 uptrend. So we'll have to see if that 200 SMA can start curling up under price, and if this can basically push through this pivot and into short-term highs as of this moment. No real earnings or sales here with this one, and you've got a lot of fund ownership. AKRO, this is one that's definitely, maybe short-term extended, but one to watch if it does base out in the future. We had that gap up, consolidation, and then strong push from, that consolidation. RS rating is a 99. No earnings or sales, but you do have T. Rowe Price once again with a position. RATM, similar to SRPT, you've got a potential pivot right here. I'd love to see a push up here on volume, then, a tight consolidation before moving through 27, and then you can manage risk right here on that, swing high, or buying it, in this spot right here, depending on your preference. Great sales growth here, but not supposed to be profitable within the next 2 years, but you do have one high quality fund with a position. INBX, another one with a strong push up on volume consolidation, just starting to move potentially on Friday. So I want to see continuation of momentum and a push through kind of, all this entire area and into, short-term highs here. And we'll have to see what happens. Definitely a nice move on volume. No real earnings or sales here. You've got an increase in fund ownership, but no high quality funds investing into this stock. IMVT, a similar super strong move up on volume, very strong volume, and now consolidating on tighter volume. Broke out technically on Friday, but I'd love to see maybe an inside day and up setup right against 10. And we'll have to see what happens. Once again, this is in a longer term downtrend, but a potential character change here with this big push up on volume through this pivot, which you can see is a pretty significant resistance breakout. This is the stage 2 breakout here right at 6.59. WRB, this is consolidating right near all-time highs. You can see that it had a little bit of trouble with that key level, but now pulled back, consolidated, and then pushed back up on Friday. I'd love to see maybe, a few more days of consolidation, let that 21 EMA catch up to price, and then really have a nice breakout where you can manage risk, versus 70 or that recent higher low. Looks like earnings growth is pretty solid. This is in the insurance area, which I saw a few charts that were acting pretty well here. Obviously not a huge growth area, but there have been some great stocks in the past. And you've got decent estimates as well as an increase in fund ownership, 50% over the past 2 years, and 2 high quality funds investing into this stock. FSLR, solar had been, a strong leading group in this area. This is pretty much the leader, but it's definitely taken a few hits over the past few weeks. This is one of the stronger looking names. We did get that pullback to 120, which, is pretty normal given that that was pretty much this prior high. You can see we had a rally on a weekly basis here versus that level. We closed above it, which is good. But looking at where it's at right now, we're in a short-term downtrend, just poking above that line here on Friday, but it is very steep. So I'd love to see some consolidation sideways for it to kind of build out a bottom of a base here and then push upwards and reclaim that 50 SMA. Now, super strong move here off the bottom. But if the rest of the solar group doesn't really participate, it's going to be tough for this one to really get going. But definitely a name to watch if you're into the solar names. AMR is another in the energy space. I believe they do coal here. Great estimates for 2022. Great quarterly numbers as well. Increase in fund ownership, 66 to 303. That's significant. Super strong prior uptrend. And now we're forming a base. A little bit wide here, but we do have a decent handle type pattern here. Nice outside day, it looks like on Friday. So watching for continuation here on volume. CEG, this is a recent IPO that's been super strong. I love these gap ups on large volume, and now it's forming some type of consolidation. Outside day on Friday, could have bought it either on that day through the prior day's high or intraday here off the 50 SMA. I'd love to see a move up towards 90 consolidation and then basically managing risk right at that prior swing low. But definitely actionable, early next week if we do see continuation upwards. Always got to manage your risk. We are a little bit far from this higher low here, but that would have been a really logical spot to manage risk against if you did buy it on Friday. And I'd love to see a move up on volume. Friday's action was great, but we're not seeing a huge pickup here. And overall, not super strong numbers. This is a recent IPO, but really nice earnings growth expected for both 2022 and 2023, going from negative to 2.82 and then to 4.24, which is significant. And we've already got one high quality fund investing in this stock and a whole bunch of funds. So I'm not quite sure if this was an IPO or a relisting or something similar to that, but nevertheless, super strong chart action. Wolf, this is another one that had a recent large gap up. We filled or tried to fill the gap a little bit. We haven't quite managed it yet, and it's showing potential bottoming action. We've got an early pivot right here, upside reversal, watching for fall through to the upside on an increase in volume, ideally, and then I'd love to see some higher lows form as it pushes through that 120 level and tries to get through 122, which has been a little bit of an issue in the past, as you can see. Great estimates for 2024. That's enormous. And sales growth is accelerating as well over the past few quarters. AEHR, another name which has some promising estimates and great growth in terms of quarterly numbers. Not really strong fund ownership, but the price chart has been super strong off these lows. Then we formed a base and then had a breakout. I believe earnings was this day right here, and then a subsequent move off that 50 SMA. Definitely a little bit short-term extended, but I'd love to see a pullback into 19.43 and then reconfirmation the upside, managing risk versus that swing low. So that is AHR, definitely a name to watch in the semiconductor space. Calix in computer networking, you can see a push off the lows here, somewhat choppy consolidation. You've got a short-term flag here, upside reversal on Friday. I'm watching for a move up on volume through that level. Not great quarterly numbers in terms of earnings, but sales growth is picking up a little bit. And you've got some estimates here. We've got earnings in one day, so I'm basically watching for a changing character and a gap up, and we'll see where it takes us. Increase in fund ownership and one high quality fund in there as well. PSN right near all-time highs. You can draw that horizontal line right here. Love to see some consolidation, then the breakout, managing risk at that swing low, being a little bit repetitive, but that's kind of what I'm looking for. Not the best quarterly numbers or growth here, but you've got a nice increase in fund ownership and one high quality fund in there as well, and it's right near all-time highs. DV off the bottom here, just a base worth watching through 30, Oh, so let's go on to the next one, CF. In the chemical space, we've got a potential pivot right through this area. We're a little bit choppy here, but we'll have to see what happens. Nice volume recently on this move up, and a super strong prior uptrend here, and great estimates for 2022. CELH, I believe this is the last one on the list. Great fundamentals in terms of the technical setup, not the best because we're still below a declining 21 EMA. We do have a potential change in trend here on Friday if we fall through to the upside, but until it really starts bottoming here and gets back above, the 21 EMA at least, I won't really be focused on this one, but just because of the fundamental story as well as the great numbers, this is a name to have on your watch list, and just kind of take a look at every single weekend. So that was a quick run through a whole bunch of stocks. Thanks for sticking with me. If you're watching at this point, comment something that you watched it all the way through down below, and also let me know your top few ideas from this list or any others that you think are worth watching. So thanks so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed. Go ahead and leave a like down below, especially if you're watching all the way up until the end at this point. Subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you guys in future videos. Take care.